Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down fascinating research into clear, dynamic stories. Today, we're diving into a study that asks a pretty powerful question. What if the one thing holding you back in the job market is your name? So let's just jump right in with a question that really gets you thinking. Imagine a candidate who is perfectly qualified. They've got the education, the experience, all from the country where they're applying. So why on earth would their application just get tossed in the no pile? This study was determined to find out.
So, this all kicks off in Finland, where researchers were staring at this big, nagging problem in their job market, a problem that just didn't quite add up.
You know, the usual suspects people point to are things like language skills or employers not recognizing foreign degrees. But this study wanted to ask, okay, what if you take all of that off the table? What happens when you have applicants who are, on paper, perfectly integrated and qualified?
And to give you a sense of scale here, back in 2016, the immigrant unemployment rate in Helsinki was 17%. That's more than double the rate for native Finns. I mean, we're not talking about a small difference. That is a massive gap that needed explaining.
So to really figure this out, researchers came up with this brilliant, and I mean really clever, experiment. Their whole goal was to zero in on just one thing: the applicant's perceived ethnic background based only on their name.
The way they did this is with something called a correspondence study. Honestly, you can think of it like an undercover operation for the job market. They send out thousands of fake but totally realistic applications to see how employers actually behave, not just what they say they do.
And they were meticulous about it. They picked 1,000 real jobs. For each one, they sent in 5 perfectly matched, top-notch applications. And I really want to stress this. Every single one of these fictitious applicants had a Finnish education, Finnish work experience, and their applications clearly stated they had excellent language skills.
So here's the absolute key to this whole thing. Look at this. The education, the experience, the skills, all exactly the same, all local. The only thing, literally the only thing they changed was the name at the very top of the page.
All right, so this is where it gets really interesting. What happened when all 5,000 of these applications landed on hiring managers' desks? Well, the responses painted a picture that was, wow, it was just impossible to ignore. A very clear hierarchy popped right out.
Let's start with our baseline. The applicant with a classic Finnish-sounding name, they got a callback for an interview 39% of the time. Pretty good odds, right? So that's our benchmark. Okay, now what about the applicant with an English name? Well, their callback rate drops to just under 27%. So right away, we see a noticeable hit.
And the applicant with the Russian name? A little worse still, getting a callback about 23% of the time. You can already see this penalty building just for having a non-Finnish, but still European name.
But hold on, because this is where the floor just drops out. The applicant with an Iraqi name, they were only invited for an interview 13.4% of the time. Think about that. Their chances are suddenly a third of the Finnish applicants even with the exact same resume. And then, at the very bottom of this ladder, we have the applicant with a Somali name. They got a positive response less than 10% of the time. Their odds of getting a foot in the door were 4 times worse than the Finnish applicants. And when you see the numbers lined up like this in a chart, it's just so stark. It's like a pyramid of preference. You see this steady decline from Finnish to other European names, and then boom, it's like falling off a cliff for non-European applicants.
Let's just think about what this means in terms of sheer effort. For the Somali applicant, to get the same number of interviews as the Finnish one, they had to send out almost 4 times as many applications. Can you just imagine how much extra work that is? How discouraging that must feel day after day?
Okay, but the researchers didn't stop there. They wanted to dig even deeper. They started asking, okay, what about other things like gender or the type of job? Do those change the picture at all?
And this is where things get really fascinating, because the data completely flips a common idea on its head. You might think, okay, immigrant women probably face a double whammy of discrimination, right? But nope, the study found the exact opposite. Women actually got more callbacks than men from the same ethnic group. This points to a whole other theory, the subordinate male target hypothesis, which basically suggests that men from minority groups can be seen as more of a threat in the workplace.
So, what else did they look at? Well, they tested for a bunch of other things that you might assume would make a difference. But, surprisingly, they didn't. The discrimination was just as bad for high-skilled jobs as it was for low-skilled ones. And it didn't matter if the job was customer-facing or tucked away in a back office. The bias was just everywhere.
So after all this, what's the big takeaway? What does all this data really tell us? Well, it goes way beyond just Finland. It really challenges our fundamental beliefs about how a fair job market is supposed to function.
The author of the study, Akhlaq Ahmad, put it perfectly. He basically says that this idea of a completely logical supply and demand job market, it just isn't real. The rules are bent by our social biases. Your amazing qualifications can become almost meaningless if you're seen as belonging to the wrong group. And that brings us to the real kicker. For years, the focus has been on helping immigrants build up their human capital. Improve their language, get local degrees, get local experience. And while that's all good, this study is a huge red flag. It shows that even with perfect, locally acquired human capital, a massive wall can still be there.
So we're left with this really tough question. If having all the right qualifications on paper isn't enough to get you a fair shot, then what does a truly fair hiring process even look like? This research doesn't hand us any easy solutions, but man, it really forces us to look the problem square in the face.